Hi guys, and many thanks for joining me. If you are new to my channel, hi, I'm Kat and I like to talk about crimes, investigations, missing people, conspiracy theories and everything related. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and also make sure you hit the notification bell so you are the first one to know about any new videos I upload. For my returning subscribers and returning viewers, I would like to thank you so much for all your continuous support and your lovely comments. Thank you. Today I want to talk to you about Jane Tanner's ever-changing statements, but before we get started, here is the disclaimer. I do not mean to be disrespectful to anyone I talk about in this video. The video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. The information I take is from the internet. I compile this information together and make a video. From the video, you guys are more than welcome to draw your own conclusions. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. In my opinion, Jane is the most important witness to make the abduction theory possible. She is, if you will, the wheel that drives the story, and in my opinion, someone had to be placed to have seen the abductor. Otherwise, the Mccanns, they wouldn't have a leg to stand on for the abduction theory. But there is one thing which seriously I don't understand. Why was Jane chosen in the first place? I think out of the whole group, she is the weakest link, and she's a terrible liar, seriously, in my opinion. I think potentially the whole group could have seen that, but I want to jump right in and start with May the 4th, 2007, and this is a day after Maddie's disappearance. During the morning of the 4th of May, Madeleine's parents and friends go to the Department of Criminal Investigations to be interviewed. At this time of the day, however, only Jerry Mccann, Matthew Oldfield and Jane Tanner are interviewed. But I have to say, contradictions already appear from their statements. Jane sees Jerry and Jazz Wilkins talking in the street. Jerry was on his way back from his apartment, where he checked to make sure his kids were sleeping, confirmed in his witness statement. Right after Jane passes Jerry and Jazz on the street, Jane notices a suspicious man carrying a child, probably Madeleine, according to her. Although it makes sense that both Jerry and the other man should have seen Jane, according to all of their statements, they didn't see each other. Really? So, according to Jane again, this abductor is carrying the child across his arms. Something like that, yeah? I'll be honest. I do not think I've ever seen anyone carrying a child like that across their arms whilst rushing to get out of the area. I mean, wouldn't that just slow them down? You know, it's not like you are carrying a bag of potatoes and you are putting them from one box to the other. You're literally carrying a child, a 3-year-old child, on the street in the night, rushing to get the hell out of there. Even with a heavy bag of potatoes, you would move it onto your shoulder because it makes it easier to carry, right? But no, it seems that in Jane's view, this abductor took his time to roam about the streets of Praia da Luz and work out whilst doing it, right? I mean, it's ridiculous, really, it is. Jazz Wilkins told the police that he didn't see Jane when speaking with Jerry, and it would have been impossible for someone to pass by him and for him not to notice the person. So, I don't know, I'm asking, Jane, were you that invisible that Jerry and Jazz didn't see you? How is it possible that someone passes by another person and only one party sees the other but not both? What? Are you serious? And are we really supposed to believe this, really? Jane, extremely sure of herself, she says the man was dressed in light-colored trousers with hair down to his collar. it makes me laugh because, I don't know, maybe Jane had an LED loop like the ones you check jewelry with, you know, like, hello, I can see you. I mean, considering that she was being so specific. And then we also have Kate McCann. She is interviewed later the same day. She refers to the man who allegedly abducted Madeleine. She couldn't have known any features of the man other than what Jane told her, right? Jane was the only one who saw anyone. Yet Kate says the man has long hair and the man is wearing jeans. I mean, come on, seriously, at least if you're gonna lie, you know, just put your story straight. Don't let anyone try to find a reason to question your story. But there are so many questions in this story, really. But, you know, I guess maybe it doesn't really matter to you because the good people of the government will jump to your aid anyway, right? So I'm just guessing this was all just a facade. Let's just get those witness statements out there and done with, because anyway no one is gonna touch us, because that's how we are, right? Now, Jerry says that after midnight on the night of Maddie's disappearance, Jane described this man to Jerry as an individual with brown hair between 30 and 40 years old, wearing light-colored trousers. So, you have to make me understand this, really. Jane sees this man walking across, right? Which would mean she mostly saw him from profile only, right? So how can she be so certain that this individual is between 30 to 40 years old? I mean, did he turn around to have a look at her? To make sure that, you know, she can tell all those features? And then also in the police report, after arriving at the scene, Jane describes the individual as wearing light-colored trousers and a dark shirt. He's 1.78 meters tall, and this man was carrying a child, probably in pajamas. Jerry, who was interviewed before Jane was, gives a much more detailed description of the man according to what Jane or O'Brien told him. So, my question again is, why didn't Jane say this to the first officers on the scene then? Why did she keep this description so vague? I mean, it really doesn't add up, does it? But I think the reason why Jerry was so specific was because this would have been the optimum description of the man. Hear me out. Give specific details to make the man real, right? The police would then have enough information to make the story believable. He's also saying 1.78 meters tall, but how could someone have such a specific recollection of exactly how tall this man was? It's not like they were carrying a measuring tape around with them. Come on, let's be serious. But I also think that Jerry was trying to influence and give indications to Jane's statement. So then later she would change it with more specific details, which of course she did, didn't she? Jerry and the group, I think at one point they probably realized that Jane was not doing such a good job at providing credible information, so they probably all agreed on how this man will look like. Jane is interviewed at the police station at around 11:30 in the morning. Now, she has really specific details. Go figure. So the first time she didn't really have that many details, but then the next day she's remembering better. Oh wow, memories. Now the man is between 30 to 40 years old, which is even a narrower age group to what she told Jerry. He's thin and he's 1.70 meters tall. Jane can now tell with certainty that the color of this man's hair is dark brown and falls over his collar. He's wearing cream or beige trousers and black classic shoes. He was rushing with a child in his arms, which seemed to be asleep. But Jane only sees the legs of the child, and she also notices that the child is wearing pajamas, which were obviously cotton, light in color, Maybe white or pale pink with flowers, maybe. But why is she saying obviously cotton? How can she know for sure that these pajamas were actually cotton? They could have been any material, so I can't really figure out why she would assume these are cotton, really. Now, if you have a look at this photo, at 10 p.m., the street where Jane allegedly spotted the man carrying the child away is really dark. See? This is how low the visibility is. So, how can Jane describe this man at the end of the road so accurately? How can she make out so many details at this time of night in this low visibility? I find it really hard to believe that you can actually say this man has dark brown hair or he's got light colored trousers which seem to be linen. So she's even mentioning they seem to be linen. It's exactly the same thing like with the cotton. I don't know in which world to Jane this statement and description of the man makes sense to her. I have no idea. I really don't have any idea. But as we all know, in the dark the visibility is low and it's impossible for the human eye to make so specific details and to remember so many specific details about a person. It's not like the person was right in front of them under a lamppost, right? No, the person was quite further away from her, and the area where the man allegedly has crossed the road was really dark at 10 o'clock in the evening. I mean, you've seen the photo, you can tell. It's impossible to make out so many details. There's also a significant factor of the 9 story. Jane Tanner left the table at 9:15 to check on her children in 5D. She then claims to have seen Jerry and Jazz Wilkins without them seeing her, and she sees a man carrying a child away from the Mccanns' apartment. The police statements of the tapas staff working that night mentions that only 2 of the tapas 9 left the table, and they were both men and they both left individually. No one else from the group was seen leaving before the alarm was raised by Kate. So as far as I understand from the tapas staff statements, in fact, Kate didn't leave the table, Jane didn't leave the table, no one left the table apart from 2 individuals, which were potentially Jerry and O'Brien, I believe. Svetlana Vitorino, which was a kitchen assistant at the tapas, said to the police possibly Jerry Mccann left the table for around 30 minutes, which would give him plenty of time to dispose of Madeleine's body, in my opinion. Ricardo Oliveira, the bar worker who served the Mccanns, told police he remembers seeing Russell O'Brien leaving the table. Joaquin Batista, a waiter at the tapas, said a skinny male left the table for 15 minutes and then another male left the table for 30 minutes. A couple of hours after the alarm is raised by Kat Mccann, Russell O'Brien, Jane Tanner's husband, grabs Maddie's activity book and writes 2 timelines, as I mentioned in my previous video with Gonzalo Amaral's book. Both of these lists begin with the group going for dinner at the tapas and their movements until the alarm is raised. But I'm really wondering here, why would he have to use Maddie's activity book? I mean, it's really sad. I would assume because a child disappeared, you would cherish this book as a memory, just like the cuddle cat. But I mean, yeah, Kate, she felt compelled to wash the cuddle cat. It was too dirty and smelly. Really, honestly, I don't know what parent would wash the last thing their child potentially touched before disappearing. No, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I don't even want to go further and mention the jogging and the tennis playing after Maddie's disappearance. And then there's also another thing. Why would you write a list of what you did during the evening? And not 1, but 2. It doesn't make sense, does it? a child goes missing and you think writing a list is so important than to try and find that child? I really don't get it at all. No. And even and why was so important for them to have a list anyway? But I do believe that really these lists were necessary if they were to come up with a cover-up story. It had to make sense. It had to match. All the members of the group had to have had a role in this timeline, because if one is not included or not added at the correct time, everything crumbles and the abduction theory is not possible anymore. Jane had to see the man carrying a child, otherwise how would you explain the abduction? And in my opinion, only people who lie would go to such lengths to even write a list. Someone who is honest about their day, they will know what they did without even writing it down, right? You know, I actually imagine O'Brien sitting at the Mccanns table saying, right, come on guys, let's do this. We should agree on what we did this evening, because, you know, we need to cover our asses, right? And maybe Jerry, when he comes back from hiding Maddie's body, he can double check the list. Hence, Jerry's name was written on one of the lists. If Jane Tanner went back to 5D at 9:40 p.m. to let O'Brien finish his dinner, he would have written down on the timeline, but there's nothing about Jane Tanner leaving the table at that time. O'Brien's timelines and the Tapa staff statements show that Jane Tanner didn't leave the restaurant at 9:40 p.m. O'Brien tells Jerry at 1 a.m. in apartment 5A that Jane had seen the man, according to Jerry's statement. But at 1 a.m., 2 police officers were in the apartment 5A, and although finding out about Jane Tanner's sighting, Jerry is not telling his wife anything about it. He's not telling the police officers about the sighting. He's not talking to Jane Tanner about it, and above all, he doesn't go in the street looking for that man who would potentially have Madeleine. So, to understand this, Jerry finds out about Jane's sighting at 1 a.m. He doesn't inform the police or anyone else, and he rather lets staff, neighbors, police officers and the community to search the whole night for Madeleine, but not once he's mentioning who they should be looking for. What? How is that even possible? How? How can such a thing be ignored by a presumably worried parent who just, you know, lost their daughter? It doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense at all. At around 1 a.m. on the night of Maddie's disappearance, Matthew Oldfield is calling Jazz Wilkins to tell him Jerry wants to know what Jazz had seen. But Oldfield never said to Jazz about the man carrying a child, and when Jazz asked if he could help with the search, he even refused. Okay, it's a weird thing to call someone to ask what they have seen. It's weird, and on top of that, to actually refuse when the help is given. But which makes me think, what if Jerry was the one carrying Madeleine and Oldfield actually called Jazz just to make sure he hasn't seen anything? Maybe that's why Jerry wanted to know. So, according to the Mccanns, Matthew Oldfield went to check on Maddie and the twins at 9:30 in the evening, but he didn't see Madeleine. If Oldfield would say that he saw Maddie, he would be incriminating himself as the last person to have seen her alive. Then, also, if he would claim to have seen Madeleine, Jane Tanner couldn't possibly have seen the abductor carrying a child at 9:15 p.m. This only means that Madeleine was missing before 9:30, even before 9:15. Jerry said he saw Maddie asleep at 9:05 p.m. So, if we believe for a second that this is true, stay with me, the abductor would only have around 10 minutes from 9:05 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. 10 minutes to take Madeleine sleeping from her bed, then go out the window with Maddie and vanish, which doesn't sound realistic at all. But do you know what I think spoils this plan for the Mccanns? The unexpected encounter of Jerry with Jazz Wilkins. I think it was a true shock for Jerry to get out of that apartment and see Jazz. But he couldn't just ignore Jazz and head over to the tapas, so he really had to have a few minutes conversation like any other normal person would. The abductor couldn't possibly just pass by Jane, Jerry and Jazz and head to 5A to take Madeleine. No, it's impossible. In my opinion, Jerry didn't even see Madeleine sleeping at 9:05 p.m. I think she was already dead. They had to come up with this story just like they planned the tapas night in a hurry. The whole group has a really clever way of trying to confuse the investigation from the beginning. They need to make sure they won't be accused of Maddie's disappearance. That's why the abductor scene was so important. He had to be there, otherwise there would be no plausible story of abduction. This seems like a really well rehearsed script out of a movie, really. Even Jane Tanner's recognition of Robert Murat, I think even this was planned ahead. Didn't she say in yet another of her statements that the abductor headed over into the direction of Murat's house? And I think this is yet again another diversion tactic. She also said in a statement that she would recognize the abductor from behind if she would see him again. To this extent, Amaral and his team arranged for a possible identification from Jane Tanner. They sit her in an unmarked police car with tinted windows. She can see outside, but no one can see who's in the car. The car is parked exactly in the same spot she said she was on Thursday evening when she spotted the abductor. Robert Murat, in between plainclothed police officers, goes up the road in the same way the abductor allegedly did. Jane Tanner is certain she recognizes him by the way he walked. But does he really resemble the picture Jane painted previously? I think not. He's not the man with the hair over his collar, he's not the slim man she said the abductor is. But at this stage, Murat fits for Jane and the group because he can be made a scapegoat and the Mccanns wouldn't be suspected. After Jane recognizes him so easily, obviously the rest of the members of the group now say they all remember seeing Murat in the area on the night of Maddie's disappearance. How convenient, right? It's like a puzzle and we make everything fit together. Later on, however, and of course to be expected, Jane changes her mind yet again and says it wasn't Murat she saw that night. That she only said that because she was panicked thinking the police kidnapped her. Oh my god. Oh my god. Who would even believe what she says? Really, seriously. So you tell me, you are put in an unmarked police car, right? And you think you're being kidnapped? Oh my god, I mean, how stupid is that? I'm sure that she went on her own agreement in that police car, as I'm pretty sure that she already knew what's gonna happen. So, I mean, how mentally sick can you even be to believe we would buy something like that? I think you must be delusional if you think that someone in their right mind would actually believe this. Really? Oh my god. Oh my god, how is this even possible? But, you know what, I'll give her that. Jane did get one thing right out of the whole sighting. The beige or cream colored trousers with buttons that the alleged abductor had. But you see who the trousers belong to? There you go. That's Jerry Mccann. And this is the same pair of trousers on the Mccanns' bed in 5A photos, which I believe were taken on the same night of Maddie's disappearance. And if this is true, and they are Jerry's trousers indeed, The audacity on this man to wear the same trousers he used to carry Maddie's body with. Oh my god, this is unbelievable. So very disrespectful of his own daughter, really. As if he wants to show us all we can't touch him, we can't break him, and we can't accuse him. Even if we want to, nothing is gonna happen to him. Nothing. All this evidence based on the Portuguese police case files, which includes TAPA's employee statements, Russell O'Brien's statement, Jazz Wilkins' statement, the actions the group took after the alarm was raised, proves to me that Jane Tanner's sighting was made up by the whole group. Because this sighting was fake, Madeleine Mccann was not abducted. And before I end this video, there's something I want to add. I believe in this world there are two types of liars, and I will make reference to people I know as comparison. Let's just say type 1 of the liars, yeah? I remember with my sister, since we were around 12 or 13 years old, she had a really bad habit of lying, and she still does it. However, no matter how much she tries lying, I always, and not only me, everyone else always catches her, and we always did, because she's not giving so much importance to the way she lies, as in, if it makes sense, if the lie makes sense, but she gives more importance to the fact that she wants to lie, right? So even though in her head it might make sense, to others it doesn't. For this reason, she is a terrible, terrible liar. No matter how much she tried and tries to lie, you can clearly tell that she is lying. That's why Jane, to me, it's exactly this type of liar. Then we also have type 2 of liar, right? When I used to work as a team leader, I remember very well one of my managers. He was always lying about anything and everything for no reason whatsoever. And he would lie so much and for so long, even he would end up believing his own lie and living it. The problem with this type of lying, however, is that even the liar will become confused at some point, because they won't even remember what the lie was about, what truth was it meant to replace. I guess that also this would be called compulsive lying. So anyway, guys, I have no idea if I made any sense here. I don't know if you guys encounter such people, but I firmly believe everyone lies at one point or another in their lives. But it's what truth we are trying to cover with a lie. That's the most important. Like, for example, lying you didn't wake up because your alarm didn't go off in the morning, when you know very well you stopped the alarm to sleep longer. That's nothing. Nothing in comparison to lying to cover your ass because you committed a crime. And with this, I will end the video today. I hope I covered all the important points in Jane Tanner's inconsistency in her statements. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe below by hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already, and also make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when my new video will be uploaded, because my next video will be about the Smith sighting and what to make of it, if it's real or not. Many thanks for watching, guys. Take care and stay safe. Bye bye.